All right. Welcome to this week's community live stream. This is the weekly outlook, and we're going to discuss the week ahead and what we might be able to expect. We're going to start with saying that once a month, I'm going to be releasing this update to YouTube for any YouTube subscribers. But if you want the every week weekly outlooks and to be able to participate in the chat and ask me questions and ask me chart requests, you can become a member. It's a 30-day free trial right now, so there's no risk. If you don't like it, you can cancel your membership before the 30 days is up, and you don't have to pay anything. So I think it's worth a shot. All right, so let's get into it. The first thing we're going to look at is the dollar. As usual, it's just fallen straight down since it's hit that 1.618 mark way up here. And now we are actually falling underneath this important 0.5 level. So, and the 200-day moving average. We are approaching oversold on the RSI, and our MACD is kind of way down here in the gutter. So I do think that we will see some sort of bounce of some sort eventually. How far we retrace before that happens is kind of, a guess at the most right now, because this could fall below this 0.5 and ultimately wick back up. We are pretty far away still from the 8 EMA and the 200-day moving average. So there could be some sort of retracement this week. We'll have to see. If we go to the weekly, you can see the 50-day moving average is right there. So we could have like a Monday, Tuesday possible come down here and test this. Maybe even as soon as tomorrow. And then I do kind of anticipate a bounce from here, at least some relief, because this is a pretty heavy downfall. If we go and look at this perspective here, we've hit the 1.618 from this downtrend, and this is the extension that it's hitting. And the dollar has, been on a tear, as everyone knows, last year due to inflation. And now we are getting a weekly bearish cross on the dollar. So one of the things that I I try to stay humble, but one of the things I take pride in is being able to see these things. And it's just a lot of fun, because for weeks, you guys were here with me, and I was saying, I think this might be the top of the dollar. I'm seeing signs of reversal that didn't necessarily translate into crypto, but it did translate into the stock market. And it correlated with the S&P futures hitting this bottom down here with this big, really solid yellow line was one of the major fibs that I had drawn from a while ago. And this turned out to be the bottom of the S&P so far. We also have divergence. And if you see this red line right here, this red trend line, you can see this is pointing down, and I have this arrow to indicate that. And to find the divergence, you have basically a price trending down and an RSI, which measures the strength of the market, trending up. And it's a discrepancy, right? The strength of the market is rising, meanwhile the price is falling. And so this indicates something that we want to pay attention to. And when we find these things, it helps us have major confidence in the fact that we might have found a bottom. We do, however, have all of the things, as I indicate here, sitting right here. We have the downtrend, which we just bounced off of last week. You can see the wick touching that green line right there. And let me get rid of these just so it's a little clearer. So here's the major downtrend that began, January of this year. So we've had a year of downtrend and multiple tests of it, and every time it touches that line, it comes back down. So we need to be super cautious here. This could just be a continuation, right? I don't really expect this to just blast through here. It could, it could, but I don't expect it to. I think we at least get a retest back down here on this 14-year trend line. And if I go to the monthly and kind of just zoom out here, you can see this big white line here is our bull market for the last 15 years. And that's currently the place that I'm going to be watching this week for the S&P 500. Because we have multiple things pointing to this spot right here now. What do we have? We have the 8 and the 21 EMAs crossing bullish. We have our S1 pivot on the weekly right here. And we also have the 236 from the most recent move Well, I wouldn't say recent, but our uptrend from the lows. So all of this right here, right around 39.65 on ES, which, you know, if you go and just draw these same lines and stuff on the SPY or SPX, you're going to get the same little area when you do this. So I do think we get a retracement back down to here. This is where I want to try to long the S&P in the attempt to break this downtrend, because I do think that this downtrend is going to break. Why do I think that? I think that because I can use the Dow Jones as a map right here. And you can see the Dow Jones has already broken its downtrend, right? And we are actually getting up over pivot on the weekly chart. We've already crossed bullish several weeks prior, and the Dow Jones is bullish. We're only down like 4% on the year now. If I take my tool and just measure the top to where we are right now, it's currently, well, no, that's a 6%. Maybe it was 4% earlier that day. I thought I measured 4 earlier, but either way, 6%, 7%, not that bad compared to how this year has been. So I think things are turning around. You can also see that same divergence here. This is pointing down, RSI is pointing up. I did a tweet earlier today showing the divergence pretty much across every market that exists right now, including Bitcoin and the crypto market cap. And we can see that here. So here's bullish divergence, price is aiming down, RSI is pointing up. Here's your bearish divergence, which marked the top, right? And it kept going. So this is something that we could experience. We could experience this continue going down while still maintaining this trend here. So we want to be careful. We want to just buy pullbacks when you see this sort of thing. You don't want to just ape in, you know, on these big green candles that we've seen, because we could get a pullback all the way down to here. It could even make a lower low again and still maintain the bullish divergence, right? Just like this continued to rise, right? While this was going down. And you can see how long this happened. Now, bull markets will last longer than bear markets historically. So keep that in mind. If I go to Bitcoin, I can show you the same thing. Where is it? Right here. So here's the same situation here where Bitcoin was rising and the RSI was falling, right? And that's your bearish divergence that marked the top. Well, now we have bullish divergence. The price is lowering while the RSI is rising. Now with Bitcoin, it's kind of a little different because we have this uptrend here, but it's not very far away from it right now. If I just double click here and zoom in on this, we're not too far away from the trend line. If I just do that and do that. So if I see this RSI touch this trend line again on a pullback on Bitcoin, that's when I'm going to add more to my longer term spot trades that I already currently have, which are all up already, by the way. So what's great about that is I have some wiggle room. If this starts falling, I have some time to get out and still actually take profits if that happens. So I'm pretty excited about that. If we go to the Nasdaq, here's the same concept. We have the price falling while this is rising, and I posted this, I don't even know how many weeks ago, showing you guys this correlation. Hey, if you guys have your mics on, could you please mute yourselves? I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so and here's that example. Here's 2008, 2009, which was the housing market bust, and you could see that RSI rising heavily while this price was still trending down slightly, and that marked the bottom. And so the hope is, and the idea is, that this is marking the bottom here, because you don't see that anywhere else for this entire 14-year span. You do not see that happening like it happened here in any of these situations. So it's significant, and we've been able to point it out, and that's really great. And so that's why I kind of considered this probably was the bottom so far of the S&P. I mean, of the Nasdaq, but Nasdaq has been lagging the S&P significantly, and it still has quite a ways to go to even get back to its trend line. So if I just do this, you can see we have ways to go, but where does it go? Well, let's see where that trend line is. So the Nasdaq, it's right here up in the golden pocket. So we could see this move pretty quickly up to this trend line to get into this golden pocket. Because if it waits a couple more weeks, well, now it's going to miss it. So if it takes a few weeks to happen, we might only get to the 618. So we have to see how fast we're going to move, and if we are going to get a pullback this week, based on the fact that the XY has a little bit of room to the 50 moving average on the weekly, and ES or the S&P is very close to this trend line, and I think we might get a pullback first before it can muster up enough energy to actually break it, if it's going to. If you're going to take a long, if we touch this area, obviously we want to keep our stop just below. This is going to create a trade that has minimal risk. We know where to enter. We know if it falls below this, we don't want to be involved anymore, so we know where to put our stop loss. This is how technical analysis is helpful. It minimizes risk, and therefore, over the long period of time, we can let our losses be small and let our gains be big. All right, so moving into, am I done with stocks? I think I'm done with stocks. I covered all those. Yep. Okay, so moving into crypto, we're going to look at USDT because this is the stablecoin dominance chart that I rely on the most. And we can currently see we have a large move up here, which was a double top. If we look back here, it's the same exact spot, right? So we could potentially have a double top on USDT dominance. And as USDT rises, crypto falls. And as USDT dominance falls, crypto rises. And sometimes there's a little bit of an anomaly there, and it's when stables are being minted or exchanged for fiat. So if you're cashing in your fiat money for stable coins, the dominance for stables will go up. And over time, you can see that. Here's just the all-time chart. So you can see that this is just up. Why? Because as time goes by, more and more people invest into crypto. And in order to do that, they need to buy stable coins first in order to exchange them for the actual crypto assets. Now, I'm showing you this chart because this is how you can find tops of things. You can draw the most major downtrend, which is from this top to this bottom. And the 1.618 is typically a very big target and a very big area where things retrace. If we look at the dollar, where'd my mouse go? There it is. If we look at the dollar, it's the same thing. So if we just look at this chart, and I just drew this retrace down here, look where the top was, the 1.618. This happens a lot, and it happens in a lot of assets. Now, these are high time frames, but it happens in low time frames too. When we start getting runners on crypto, like I'm in some obscure things like True that nobody's heard of, and but it could be something good long term. I've looked at it fundamentally. We still have to see how that plays out. But like, you know, A0, when it makes if it makes its run, I'm going to measure that recent downtrend. In the 1.618 and the 2.272, when we have parabolic runs, that's where you want to take your profits, and you can nail tops and just sit out and wait. You can see it stayed up here for 3 months, right? But ultimately, it never closed a monthly candle over that 1.618. It's very accurate. If we look at Bitcoin, and I just come back here and measure this downtrend from the last bear market, look where our top is of the bull market at the 1.618. That's where you want to take your profits. Okay, so this isn't just something that works sometimes. This works quite often, and it's very, very useful. So moving over to Bitcoin, we have this large falling wedge. Now we've also tapped a major fib level here. If I go to the spot chart and get rid of this, there's a couple scenarios. So depending on where you start your fibs, you can start them way down here, right, which is the bear market low, and just go to the bull market top. And you can see we're very close to the 0.5. There's still room below, down to about 14.7, right? So that ultimately could still happen. But right now, things are turning around, and we're getting very close to testing that 8 EMA again on the spot chart. I kind of expect this to hit. This is going to be 17.8, and 18.3 is another big target. In order for Bitcoin to regain bullishness and continue on, we need to break 18.5. That's like the ultimate barrier. And this is why, right about here. You can see all of these levels right around this zone here. So this is 18.6, right? And you see all of this support. And this big red candle is what broke it. So if we are going to turn around, we need to clear the 8 EMA and we need to clear 18.5, and then we need to get over it and find support on top of it. And then we need to start seeing these weekly EMAs start curling and pulling upward. When that happens, we can have a lot more confidence in crypto. Now, I have bought some things on spot, and it's only because it's a speculative guess right now. But there are a lot of things pointing to this potentially being the bottom. And I know we've said this before when we were here, right? And it ultimately didn't work out. We had our stops in place and we weren't hurt. At least I hope you weren't. So, now we can just try again. Until this gets up over the 8 EMA and like stays there for a while, we can't really be super confident about this turning around. Right now, every dip at this point is kind of a speculative buy, right? And we just need to be ready to cut our loss if things start turning sour again. So with that, that's kind of how I feel right now. We can take our fibs though, and we can move them in a couple different places. If I go to that green candle that started the major uptrend, you can see we are just underneath the 0.5. And if I zoom in, you can see we are about to touch it right now. It's right around 17.4. So I want to see what it does here in the next 24 hours at 17.4, 17.5. This is going to be the big spot that we need to clear. If we can clear it, great. Then we can take it to the 8 EMA on the weekly. If we move to the daily, you can see we're in a bull flag and we just broke it. So that's a good sign. However, that 0.5 is right there. And let's see where our pivot points are. So yeah, we got a pivot point way up here at 1800. So ultimately 1800 needs to clear on the daily to become somewhat bullish. It needs to hold it. And then we need to get over that 18.6 mark in order to maintain and sustain a bigger move. Okay, going back here. So here's another option of where we could put our fibs. And it's one of the places I like to put it because I like to try to ignore black swan events. So if I just ignore the COVID drop, so like just pretend the COVID drop never happened, and I just go off like one of these bases here where you can see if COVID never happened and that big scare didn't occur, Bitcoin would have just traveled sideways here, right? And this would have been where the bottom was. And if we do that, well, we just tap the 618, which is a big level. And if I go to the monthly, we actually never close the candle below that yet, right? So there's that showing us that maybe this is a potential bottom. And then if I go with this daily candle, gotta zoom out again, where this started right here, right? If I just go with the first move up, so this move here is what started the uptrend, because like here's a downtrend right there, right? And so that downtrend ended and then this whole uptrend began. And so if I start my fibs there, you can see we nailed almost the 786. So there's a couple ways to draw this, and no matter which way you draw it, we're hitting a major fib almost on every one of them. So that's just kind of one more thing that's making me feel a little more confident in buying this support right now. Another thing that happened was this little mini bearish pennant that ended up being bullish, right? So typically this pattern is a bearish pattern and it ended up becoming bullish. We also on the daily have a potential 821 EMA cross coming, right? So it's yet to be seen if those are going to cross. We need maybe 2 or 3 more days in order to get the cross and then see if we retest. And if that happens, then we can try to buy that retest with our stops just below and have a minimal risk type trade. Keeping in mind, this is a bear market and we're trying to long it. But also notice I haven't been trying to short this. Since this big drop here, I have not tried to short anything. And I think the reason is because I don't think the downside has much left if there is any. If there is one more leg down, I don't care if I'm not in the short, right? Like I feel like the upside from here is much greater than the downside potential over a longer period of time. So I feel much better adding to spot trades long rather than trying to leverage trade short and just continually get burned like everybody else was here when they were trying to short it. So looking at Ethereum, we have these levels that we've been pointing at over the last week or so. And this is where we were sitting for a while. We made a big move down to that box and then a big move up from that box. And now we're through it and coming out again. So if we kind of just go into like a 4 hour, you can see there's a resistance here. We got the 200 moving average on the 4 hour that we're touching right now. And then ultimately this downtrend that just basically from these two wicks, if we can clear that, I might try to scalp this up to the 1336 level finally, which has been our main target for the last like week, if you've been following in the Discord. So there's ETH. We did Bitcoin. I am midterm bullish, but I think this week we might experience some pullbacks in stocks, and I think crypto might make a move up. However, it's kind of day by day, and I'm going to monitor this as the situation evolves and see what we have to work with. It's kind of really choppy. It's really hard to really get much of anything with the market the way that it is. And so I think spot trading or very low leverage trading at best, we might start being able to get into the arena of swing trades, which is kind of exciting if things start moving up again. We have this big space on Ethereum with this downtrend. So if we can clear this 0.5, well, then we got a lot of room up here that we could potentially trade to get this back up to this trend line and see what that looks like. So, and then ultimately we want to clear that downtrend. So with all of that, I think I covered everything. There's probably something I'm forgetting. Oh, ETH Bitcoin. So let's go into ETH Bitcoin. All right, so ETH Bitcoin is running out of room. It needs to make a move soon. And if it clears the top of this, and let me start by zooming out so you can see what I've done. So this is the weekly chart. And basically I've just drawn my fibs from this top here. Clear that. This top here to this bottom here. And it gives me all these levels, right? And you can see we've been kind of trading in this golden pocket up here for a long time, fell out of it, got back in it. And so in order for Ethereum to become bullish over Bitcoin, we need to clear this red trend line that you see extending all the way. And we've hit it quite a few times and it's failed almost every time. Now, for me, what I want to see is I want to see this fall, right? And I know like everybody's like, oh, you want to see Ethereum fall. No, what I want to see is Bitcoin rise. I want to see Bitcoin take back over again, because that is what ultimately is going to be best for the entire market. If Ethereum keeps outpacing Bitcoin and Bitcoin's just suffering consistently, historically, that's not good for the whole market. Now, maybe things change in the future and Ethereum takes over. And then at some point when Ethereum rises, it's dominating the whole market. Who knows? But right now, when alts are outperforming Bitcoin, the market's bearish. And that's just the overall situation. So we want to be Bitcoin maxis. we want to support Bitcoin because ultimately it moves everything. So we'll see what happens, but it is in a little bit of a pennant formation, and it is a bullish pennant formation because of the fact that it came in from below, and it might be a continuation pattern. But then if it does break this 0.68, we still got to get through the 0.71 and ultimately the downtrend and that 786 in order for Ethereum to really explode over Bitcoin. So I'll be monitoring that as well. And Bitcoin dominance is still in the gutter. And ultimately what we want to see is Bitcoin dominance rise and the market rise as well. Lately, when Bitcoin dominance is falling, the market is falling. So we want to see the opposite start happening, and that would be an indication that the bull market is starting to possibly return. Okay, so I have finished that. I'm going to go into the chat over here, and if anybody has any questions, chart requests, or just anything in general they want to talk about, go ahead and ask. Hey, IceRack, you're here. Do you think that Bitcoin may move to 18K plus to increase greed and then do a final capitulation move a la Wyckoff? Now, I think the Wyckoff is pretty much finished for Bitcoin, and I think it's actually starting to have the Wyckoff accumulation phase begin. And if we want to look at what that looks like, let me see if I can find a different chart. It's not filled with stuff. Okay, so Wyckoff accumulation is just going to be the opposite of Wyckoff distribution. However, accumulations are much more narrow compared to the the distributions, which are, you know, very wide. So like this distribution, for example, was, you know, from here, and my magnet's messing with me, from that zone to this zone here, you know, and this is kind of where the distribution took place, whereas accumulations are a little thinner. So if we kind of see what that looks like, so like down here, let me take my magnet off, this was where the accumulation zone took place. It was like down in here, I guess. And so I guess not really. All right, so scratch that on that last market. But I think that the accumulation zone here will be less of a range. So it's going to be something like from here to wherever this bottom is. And you can just kind of see that this is thinner than how wide this zone is. Now, unless it ends up coming all the way down here, you know, maybe it does, but right now I'm seeing things that are pointing up, right? Like the what do you call it? I'm drawing a brain fart. Divergence. So, you know, yet to be seen, but I think that the accumulation phase is going to look something like, you know, like this, where we've already kind of started it, where it comes up and then down, and then another one, and then we got another one, and then we get something like this, you know, and then another one, and then it starts heading up. And so the accumulation phase is going to look something like this, similar to how this one was. We got to move down and then up and then down and then up and then down and then up, and then ultimately it makes the bull market starts. What we want to see when the bull market starts again are all of the moving averages getting bunched up. So if we just add that real quick and go to the daily, and I'm going to erase all of that. So you see how the MAs are getting close together? That means a bigger move is potentially going to come soon. And you can see how here the MAs are very spread apart. Then they make a big move, but ultimately this wasn't the beginning of the bull market. We come back down, and then here's where all these moving averages are very close together again, right? And then that creates the bull market. So I expect the same thing to happen here, where we get a move, right? Because these still aren't really that close together yet. They're still not touching each other, right? So we get a move back up, and then a move back down, and then it kind of idles out. And then when all the MAs are together again, we can see the big move up. But right now we could be potentially at the bottom. It's still yet to be seen. If it's not, then we have till 14K and 12K possible. So we just need to be vigilant and keep an eye on what's happening. Ultimately, though, let's see, the weekly. We're very far below the weekly 200 moving average, where historically we haven't really been below that. And if you ever bought Bitcoin below the 200 moving average on the weekly chart, you did really, really well. So if this is going to survive, underneath this 200 moving average is a great place to add Bitcoin for the long term, in my opinion. Okay. Any questions or chart requests? I'm just catching this bit of a stream for the first time. I watched your 821 vid and really appreciated that one. Can you have a look at CRV chart and let me know what you think? Yes, I can. CRV will use Binance. Looks rough. I like this wick though, and typically when you see something like this large move down and then this big bullish candle off the bottom, these are trend reversal type situations. And what you could do is really just try to long this with a stop just underneath this base that's forming. So it looks like somewhere around 62 cents. And let's see what the 821's doing. So the 821 looks decent. For confirmation, you're going to want to see these cross, right? And so if the 821 cross is bullish, then what we can do is try it long and keep our stop underneath the 821. However, CRV is kind of like really volatile, right? So it can have really big wicks below, and then still maintain the bullishness and get all the way back up again. But I would probably only try to spot trade this. I would not try to leverage trade it because it's so low. And if you're gonna leverage trade it, I would go like minimal 3 times on it, because it moves quite heavily. This could be, you know, a big double bottom. There's not a whole lot of chart history, and so it makes it hard to chart this. I mean, I can draw fibs from the bottom to the top, and you can see it's not really helpful. You know, this doesn't really do much for us. These would be the levels of resistance going back up, and so you could use that. But I mean, ultimately, you can see it bypasses them a lot. So they're not even really, like, you can't really be confident in buying those supports or selling those resistances because it'll shoot past it pretty heavily. I would want to see a downtrend break to be really confident. And so that would be, you know, here, ultimately. So we could get a move all the way back up to about 84, depending on how long it took, somewhere in the 80s. And then ultimately I would want to see it break that downtrend. And then I wouldn't even really want to buy it after it broke it. I would want to buy the retest of it if it gave it to me. That way I could keep my stop loss just below. All right. Can you please look at GMX? This is a popular one. Somebody has their mic on. Who is that? Okay. All right, GMX. So this is definitely bullish on the daily. The 821s look really nice, and it's gonna try to continue breaking its all-time high, which was way back here in the early stages. If we go off of here and just chart that downtrend, you can see we're nailing the 886 there and trying to get through this greed FOMO range. And that's what this blue level is. If we can get through here and break $60, then it can really, really take off. So that's what I would wait for myself, because I'm not in it. If you're already in it, then it's just a hold, and you don't really want to be selling it until it starts showing some weakness. We are oversold on the daily with the RSI almost. So I don't know how much more upside it might have. It could just take off. But right now, this is really as high as it's ever been. So if you were fortunate enough to buy it down here and see these really good gains that it's given, this is probably where I would at least take some profits, if not a majority of them, until I saw it get through this level. It got through the golden pocket and rejected several times until it finally got through it again. So it is bullish, and it would be a hold. But I personally would take a little bit of profits if I had been in this already. I wouldn't enter it until it broke that level right there. And so I'll just add an alert for $60. And if I see it break $60, then I'll enter it for a trade to go pretty high. I think it could then take off pretty well if it did that. And if it did, your targets would be, you know, well up here, and there's that 1.618. So it could see, you know, 100% move from here if it can get through there, in my opinion. DPX, I think I have that one. I think I've been watching that. Yeah. So let's see what I have. So there's a downtrend. I've been waiting for it to break that downtrend, I think if it does break that downtrend, it'll move pretty quickly. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a low supply on this token, and I like low supply tokens because they can move pretty good. So let's just assume that's the bottom. We'll draw from our top to our bottom to get our levels. Come on, magnet. Okay. And so if we break that trend line, we got the 382 at 414 and the 0.5 at 655. Those would be our targets should that trend line break. And that's basically, that's kind of as easy as it gets, is we just wait for that trend line to break. So at the moment, I'm going to put, I think I have an alert on the trend line. Hey, and if anybody doesn't know, you can put alerts on trend lines, which is really cool. You just right click on the trend line. Actually, no, go into settings. No, that's not it either. Did I click on it? Right click on the trend line. Oh, it's already got an alert. That's why. So here it'll say add alert for trend line. I already have one, so that's why it says edit. But you can add the alert to the trend line and select crossing up. And then it'll ping you whenever it's touching that trend line. So then you can go find it and you can go trade it. Okay, Sol, Matic, AVAX. Let's go to here, close, Atom, and then go to AVAX. Let's try Sol first. Where are you? Sol. Okay, daily. Turn that off for now. So Sol was in this big head and shoulders pattern that broke. And when you draw your fibs, it's not a really good story so far. So it's just kind of sitting in the middle of these two areas. So I don't really know what I want to expect out of this. And there's not really anywhere else to start your fibs to try to see if you can get different ones. This is just basically what we're working with. So we're pretty far away from both of these major fibs on the higher time frame. And it's trying to get itself back up into bullish territory by getting above the EMAs again, but ultimately it has a lot of resistance. So I kind of expect Sol to, if it's going to start trending up, I don't think it's just going to blast straight up. It's crypto, so it definitely could, but in my opinion, this is one of the more risky things to try to invest in right now. I think it's suffered quite a bit compared to the rest of the market. So I'm going to wait at least for a daily EMA cross if I'm going to attempt this. And there's a lot of things it needs to get through. So let's go with Matic next. Matic. Matic has been one of the shining stars in this bull market. And it broke its downtrend a long time ago, before most things have, and some things still haven't even broken their downtrend. So it's something to be said. Let me get rid of some of these drawings. And that one. So it's coming up on the major 0.5 again, just from this downtrend retrace. And it looks like that's the current resistance. So if we get over this 96.11 mark and can close a daily candle over it, then I would consider it bullish to the 618. However, you can see the last time that happened, this big green candle happened, right? And so I guess if we just start seeing it move over that spot, we can try to scalp this long. The daily EMAs are bullish again, so that's a good sign. So this is, in my opinion, a buy right now. And you would want to just keep your stop loss underneath the EMAs to just, risk management, which is number one priority. We want to manage our risk. So that's what I would try to do. We could maybe get a retest to the 8 EMA again, but it already has retested after the bullish cross. So this would have been the ideal entry had you seen it right there, because then you could have kept your stop very close by. So if you're going to enter it now, you just have to understand you're going to have to measure your risk on what that might look like. And if you keep your stop loss under the EMAs, that looks pretty hefty at the moment. So yeah, it's almost a 5% risk. So that would be a spot trade if you're going to do it. 2 times leverage max, and you'd have a 10% loss if your stop hit. So that's how I would approach it. Understanding also that we could get a big wick below that then gets bought up again, and you just get wicked out and maintain bullishness. AVAX has looked pretty good recently. So this is about to cross bullish. I don't know why all those are up here. And so here is where I would want to wait for the cross itself and then hope we get like a wick back down to test those EMAs that I could enter in to create a good trade. So that's kind of what I've been waiting for on AVAX. I did have a long earlier and I kind of chickened out on it, and now it's gone up. So, oh well. If this just keeps going, the target is going to be that 886 and that moving average. And I don't know where these fibs are drawn from. Actually, they're not even. Oh, so it's drawing that uptrend. That's not even relevant anymore. It shows you the last time I charted AVAX. All right, so you'd have to go from here to here. Okay, so you got a 236 pretty close by. So I expect that to resist. And then we might be able to get the retest after the cross bullish. So that's what I'll look for. 1450 area, possibly even that $15 area, and then maybe a retrace after that. We'll see what happens, but it's not bullish yet on the daily, so it doesn't have to maintain this at all. It could just start falling and then these curl and maintain bearishness. So we just want to watch out for that. I would stay away from it now with how far away it is. If you're not already in, if you're in, it's a hold. If you're not in yet, I would wait for some sort of confirmation retest of support to enter that. All right. Anybody else? Chart requests, questions? Feel free to hop on voice if you wanted to speak directly. I'm all for that instead of the chat. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to end this live stream. Thank you for watching. Again, if you like what you see here and are interested in daily updates with charts and seeing the other weekly updates every Sunday night, feel free to jump in the Discord with that free trial. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. Have a good night.